about our lives and families, but now we are talking business.
Talking business,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Welcome. For those who may watch this later or for maybe joining later, this series of guest speaker sessions is part of the Execution Lab, where we help people start their businesses. We are all about income first companies, so feel free to join our next event as well. Follow us on Luma, LinkedIn, everywhere. So today I'm super excited to have Fernando Labastida, um, a cross-cultural, cross-generational, AI-powered, this is interesting, content marketer. His work sits at the intersection of content, sales, and technology, always focused on what actually converts. Today, Fernando runs the Viral Genius Framework, a fractional CMO service helping Gen X, I want to hear more about that, and boomers founders build AI-powered founder-led marketing strategies and hosts the AI Marketing Case Studies podcast. Okay, welcome, Fernando. I want to know how you run all of this. This is amazing. Really glad to have you. And yeah, the stage is yours.
Yeah. So let me see. Where do I want to start? Okay. So I want to go back in time a little bit to 17, I would say even 18 years ago, probably more like 17 years ago. Today's 2026. And then 17 years ago was 220. Yeah. Not, think about 2007. Okay. And I was in sales. I was a salesperson for a software company. I had been in the startup software space for about 10 years. And all of a sudden, I noticed that this blogging thing was really taking off. And so I started blogging on the side of when I was working as a salesperson at a company called Pervasive Software. So Pervasive Software was an ETL and data management company. The thing is, I had always loved writing. I studied, my first major in college was journalism. I loved writing as a kid. And I even wrote newsletters before there was such thing as an internet. And I started blogging, and then 2009, the economic crash that we had around 2008, 2009, the Great Recession came. I was laid off because I didn't have a pipeline for 6 months. And a salesperson can't, you can't keep a salesperson around who doesn't have a pipeline for 6 months, right? So they laid me off, and I decided to go full, commit fully to blogging. And I started a blog in Spanish, basically with the intention of attracting Latin American software companies. And this is kind of how I met you, right? Because you were used to be with a software outsourcing company. And the point of doing my blog was to provide advice. All I was doing is writing articles such as the 7 steps to enter the US market, how to sell software in the United States, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And those are the early days of SEO, when you could write content and you really didn't have to do any link building or any optimization. It was kind of like, if you build it, they will come type of thing. And my page got positioned at the top of Google in Spanish for certain keywords, such as selling software in the United States market, entering the US market, et cetera, all in Spanish. And so that's how I got my first clients. And I was a freelancer providing marketing, consulting, and marketing services for about 2 or 3 years during that time period. But then I decided to get back into the workforce because I found a job that I couldn't resist, right? I think it was a mistake going back into the corporate world. So fast forward to 2023, and I get laid off again, right? That was kind of like at the beginning of when the LLMs are really starting to come on board, and people started all of a sudden realizing that, hey, we can replace our content marketers with AI. And that's what the company that I was working for decided. And by the way, they had overextended themselves. They had grown too fast, and they had to cut cost as well. So I was expendable. I was November of 2023. And I decided, that's it. You know what? No more working for the corporate world. I'm going to go back into the business world, but I'm never looking back. I'm never going to get another job. But it was a different landscape. AI was there, and content marketing really wasn't working the same way it was. And so what I decided to do, and I noticed something, and I think part of building a business, Abel, and tell me if this is the same for you, but part of building a business is you see an insight that nobody else notices. You because of your experience, your lived experience, your own particular knowledge, and your unique perspective on the world, you can see patterns out there that you can take advantage of. And that's what I decided. That's what I did. I noticed there was a certain pattern with startup software companies that not all of them, but a lot of them, some of the most successful software companies had a pattern that you could pretty much identify across companies like HubSpot, Salesforce.com, Basecamp, Twilio, Gainsight, ConvertKit, Mighty Networks, etc. And that is, number one, the founders or the founder writes a book, right? And the book is sort of like the manifesto for their point of view on the world, right? So HubSpot, the founders of HubSpot, Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah, when they first launched HubSpot in 2006, they invented this term called inbound marketing. Inbound marketing was HubSpot that invented that, right? So they published a book called Inbound Marketing, right? Because what they wanted to do was they wanted to basically teach the market about this new type of marketing, which combined social media and search engine optimization as a way of attracting people instead of interrupting them. And by the way, their software enabled people to do that with an all-in-one software. And then they started sharing all that content about inbound marketing through a blog, through their podcast, through their videos. And then they eventually ended up having the conference, the yearly conference in Boston, Massachusetts called Inbound, which became the convergence point for anybody that was interested in inbound marketing, right? So this is a software company, okay? But the software company wrote books, blogged like crazy, had an annual conference, right? Salesforce.com did the same thing. I don't think Mark Benioff wrote a book until later, but they had Dreamforce, right? And Dreamforce has become the industry conference for that industry. And then you have companies like Twilio, which is it's a company that focuses on communication protocols within. You could probably tell me better than that because you're an engineer. But Twilio, the founder wrote a book called Ask Your Engineer. It's all about how to think like a software engineer, even if you're a brick and mortar company and you're not a technology company. And they have an annual conference for developers, right? So you're starting to see a pattern here, right? Successful software companies are successful not because they have the best product or the most innovative product, but because they know how to develop a point of view, a unique point of view where they can position themselves as the leader of a business category. They write about the business category in a book, and then they launch a conference that becomes the gathering place for this. So I noticed this, and I wrote a book. I decided, okay, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to write a book called The Startup Book. And the Startup Book was teaching companies. I said, look, you can do what these guys are doing, right? You don't even have to be a big VC funded company. You could be a bootstrap company. You could be a 1-person company. You could be a 10-person company. Write a book, right? But I didn't finish the circle there because I hadn't developed that insight about the conferences and about the summits. But as I was going about my job of selling my book, and then I actually got some clients that I did a ghostwriting for, right? So I got 2 clients. One was in Mexico, and actually 2 clients from Mexico who had seen what I was writing about on LinkedIn, because I was writing about the importance of writing a book to get your POV out there, to talk about your your unique category and how your service and product is, if you're interested in doing what I'm explaining, then you can hire me, or you could do it yourself, but it's better and more convenient and easier for you to hire me. So I got some clients where I helped them write books. I was the ghostwriter for them, and I figured out how to do like very detailed prompts so that I could convert. I would interview these clients on a call just like this. I would record them for each chapter. Each chapter had its own phone call, and I would take the transcript from those calls and run it through my Claude project, and it would spit out a manuscript, which I then had to go edit, and then I formatted the book, and I had a designer do the covers, etc. Those are two books. But then I realized with one of my clients that, well, we need to move this book. We need to get it exposure. So I helped him organize an online summit, right? And so instead of doing an in-person conference, like Dreamforce or like Inbound or something like that, we decided, because my client didn't have any money, we decided, okay, let's do a virtual conference, a virtual summit. So we organized a 3-day, 16 speaker summit. He knew a lot of people in Mexico, and he knew a lot of people who we could invite to be speakers at his summit. We organized it 3 days, all about AI, and we got 904 people to register for his summit, which this is 904 new leads that he got in just 3 days of the summit, right? So when people register for your summit, those are new leads, right? So, but not only that, but because his name was associated with all these high caliber speakers who were talking about the same thing that he was talking about, and the topic of the book as well, that he got 904 new leads, but also he became known in the space in Mexico, right? So he became known in the space, and that's the power of organizing a multi-day, multi-speaker summit, right? And so I suddenly realized, well, actually, when I wrote the startup book and I said that a startup company should write a book, that wasn't complete. The complete picture was, you think about your unique point of view, you put it in a book, then you boost it with what's called a lightning strike. That's what I call these summits, these virtual summits. It's a lightning strike because it creates a big spike of awareness and a big spike of leads in a matter of 2, 3, or 5 days, however long you decide to do this, right? So that's what I decided to start to add to my offering. And now that's what I'm doing. I'm telling companies, I said, look, if you're a startup company, or if you're a $1 million company, $2 million company, and you feel stuck in your sales, you're flatlining in your sales, you're not going up, and you're not going down, you're just staying stuck. What better way to boost your revenues, to boost your client base, to boost your awareness that people have of you, by writing a book, then organizing a multi-day summit where you have many speakers and you can you can get 500, 1,000, 1,500 people to register, and you're hitting two birds with one stone, getting lots of leads and really creating a lot of publicity around your company and your unique point of view, right? And then after the big spike, you go back down to a flat line, but the flat line is a higher baseline than where you were before, right? That's the pattern, right? And then you might not even have a flat line. You might start going gradually up because of the after effect of all the content, which is the third piece of the puzzle. If you organize a virtual conference with, you've had 3 days worth of sessions, 16 sessions, 16 speakers. Those are 16 1-hour-long videos that you have recorded, right? Each one from a high authority person in the space. Those 16 1-hour videos, that's 1,600 hours of videos, you can then leverage AI to repurpose that content into short videos, newsletter articles, LinkedIn posts, Instagram Reels, LinkedIn Reels, tweets or Blue Sky shares, all kinds of content, right? With the help of AI. And guess what? It's not content that AI made up out of thin air. It's content that comes from these high authority speakers, including you. You got to be a speaker at your own summit, by the way. Um, but it's authentic, organic content. I call it organic AI content, right? Because it's actually content that comes from you and your speakers that you can repurpose. And guess what? In 3 days, you have content for 3 to 6 months. So if you want to do content marketing, you organize maybe 3 or 4 summits a year, maybe just 1 or 2 summits a year. But each summit produces up to 6 months worth of content that can last you for about 3 to 6 months until you have your next summit, right? And so it's fantastic. It's a fantastic as a way of boosting your credibility, boosting your authority. All the third party people, all the speakers are third party authoritative people. They become associated with you. You get the benefit of being surrounded by these famous people that you invited to be a speaker, and you have all this content, and you have all these new leads, and it kind of is a way of breathing a fresh. It's like refreshing your company, right? So that's the service that's the service I'm offering. But I think it's really interesting because I saw this trend, and it just so happened to coincide with the rise of AI created content, right? You go on LinkedIn nowadays, or you go on Facebook or X or whatever, and you see all this content that is so obviously created by AI. Having something like an in-person or a virtual conference where real people are talking is great, because people crave authenticity. They crave connection with other people, right? My next step, in addition to offering like these virtual summits that I come in and do as a done for you service, right? So I help you write your book, I help you organize your summit, I do all the content repurposing with AI. I set up complete workflows and skills in Claude Cowork. I use Claude Cowork. That's my go-to AI hub, if you will. But the beautiful thing about it is it's actually authentic, um, human generated content, right? But then after you graduate from the virtual summits, then the next step is, once you've gained enough momentum, once you have a bigger audience for your newsletter and your social media because of all the content that you were creating and all the virtual stuff, then organize an in-person conference. And there's nothing like having an in-person conference, like Inbound, like Content Marketing World, like CES in Las Vegas. That's huge, right? Maybe that's not a good example of a company created summit or a conference, but you know what I'm talking about, right? An in-person conference is great because now people want to get out and meet other people, right? They're stuck behind their computers. We're not getting any suntans because we're not getting out of our house, right? We we people want to get out and meet people and do something that's authentic. But by the way, and this is contradictory, it's kind of ironic, but all that authentic human connection and then the content created by people speaking live on stage, you can then leverage AI to repurpose that, right? And that's where it kind of leads to the organic AI content, right? So I kind of went a little long in my explanation, so I'm happy to, answer any additional questions you might have, Avela, from the audience.
Wow, thank you, Fernando. I do have a lot of questions, but as usual, I'm gonna let others ask first because otherwise, I won't let anyone asking. Okay, Joel, go ahead, man.
Sure, Fernando. Thank you for what you're saying. I feel like it's a message that I try to preach from a position of non-power, right? Um, but it's something I've understood for the last 5 or 6 years, especially since COVID, when this shift went over to this kind of solopreneur, user generated, very based on experience type of content, right? And building a loyal following, because the following you get is from people that are actually interested in that field. So in my position, my principal at the company I work for, he's 80 years old. He's a marketing guy. He owned a sign company, and that's literally what like got his business started. And they're very, I don't know if wary is the right word, or just untrusting. Anything AI, anything social media, they've tried it and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you have any insight to that as far as how to present the long game that's a compounding sort of effect that
Yeah.
this content marketing is in a light that would be understandable or approachable from that old school kind of mindset.
Yeah. I mean, and Abel, if you want to answer as well, but I definitely have some opinions on that. I think that first of all, I mean, AI is inevitable. There's no stopping it. And I think that the attitude, and this is the mindset that I decided a little while ago, was that I was going to get ahead of the curve, right? I'm not going to be left behind. And if it's not working a certain way right now, these models are developing so fast that they are going to work a week from today or 2 weeks from today or what have you, right? And so the more if you can get ahead of the curve and just cram and learn as fast as you can, just like when you were in university studying for exams, you go, to a library or go somewhere where there's quiet, where the kids are not screaming, and you watch any YouTube video you can about AI. But in terms of content, I think that, I think that the way I see AI and human content is that AI is really not here to replace us so much as to 100x us. And I think that is, so I'm pretty ADHD, right? And everything I have done up until now through my business life is all just in my head. Because if you ask me to sit down and write an SOP, right? Standard operating procedures. I mean, I'd rather get drilled at the dentist with no Novocaine than sit down and write an SOP. But going and documenting my process in Claude Cowork is amazing. It's so much fun because Claude basically is my executive assistant. Claude Cowork is my executive assistant, right? So it tells me exactly what I need to do today. Like I say, Claude, give me my morning routine, and it tells me who I have to follow up with today, who I've got to call, the tasks I have, etc. And then it either does things automatically for me because I have plugins for Notion, I have plugins for Zoom, I have plugins for this and that and the other, or there's a certain manual process I have to do. So really what it's doing is it's 10xing me, and eventually I want to get to a point where it's 100xing me, right? So it's almost like, I don't know if you all have heard the term the singularity. It's almost like as though I already have a kind of an AI exoskeleton, right? And it's giving me superpowers, especially when it comes to being organized and not having to keep everything in my head and not being scattered and short attention spans like ADHD people usually have, right? So I don't know if I answered your question, Joe. Maybe if you want to
You
refine it a
gave
little.
me you gave great perspective. I guess it's kind of ambiguous, honestly, the thing that I'm asking, and I don't know if there's really an answer for it. But you kind of brought up some interesting points because it's interesting. In recent weeks, the principal I'm talking about has mentioned about how much AI has helped him with his research
Oh
in a
yeah.
very fast way, and it's just maybe that's my angle into
No,
um
you just gave me something.
he needs a personal assistant. Like, he needs a personal assistant. He's a busy guy. He gets, I would assume he's ADHD just by knowing this guy, right? But from his time frame, probably largely undiagnosed and this and that. But
Mhm.
I would say the same about any entrepreneur from that era that became established. You kind of have to be able to jump from one thing to another very quickly to be an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Without any of these tech tools that we have available to us today. But I think you did answer my question, honestly.
Well, and
And
you gave me a hint of another approach. I wanted to share. You said that he's getting into research, right? So I think that with people who are AI resistant or skeptical, I think it's to find one task that they can focus on themselves, not complicated, not say, oh, Claude Cowork can organize your life, right? Because that's kind of overwhelming them with something that like they'd prefer to like put their head in the sand and forget about it. But just right there, they're focusing on research. That's perfect. My stepfather, who's 82 years old, he's humorous and he figured out how to make funny cartoons with ChatGPT, and that's what he's doing. He's like sharing all his funny cartoons on Facebook with ChatGPT, and he loves it, right? But once you get them hooked on one thing, then you could do it on another and another, and then they're, you know, then they're converted. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, Joel.
I do have a question first. So, something that we have been talking a lot among entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs is when our business model requires us to gain some authority in the market. Because,
Mhm.
like for instance, well, you've been talking a lot about that, and you know, having people look at you as if you were the person with the answers, with the guides, with the experience already. So for those of us that are looking to build a business where authority is required, is there any shortcut, or is there any, kind of process that we have to go through? Is there a timeline? Like, how can we approach that?
Okay. So let me talk about it from the perspective of, you know, something, you know how to do something. Maybe you're not the world's preeminent expert in the field. You don't have a TED talk or, a best-selling book, but you do know something. You are an expert about in something. And I think one of the things that stops people from claiming their authority is that whole imposter syndrome thing, where they think, okay, well, I know something about this, but I'm not an expert. Well, you do know something about it. Number one, you're an expert. You're like, think about, suppose there's a school, and the school was, had a scarcity of teachers. They didn't have enough teachers, and they needed to teach first graders how to read, right? And there's only one teacher, and she has a class of 30 first graders, right? That's a lot of kids. They could get the third graders who already know how to read to help her, right? So the third graders can sit down with some of the first graders and teach them how to read. And so the teacher's there in the third. So that's the mentality you got to take. You're maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of your audience. And what you can do is start sharing what you know from your own personal perspective, right? So, and let me explain what I mean by that. So you could do a YouTube channel or share videos on Instagram, usually like talking head videos, vertical videos for Instagram, horizontal videos for YouTube, or both on YouTube, right? Vertical and horizontal. And share what you know from your perspective and your experience. And the reason why I'm saying that is generic how-to content now, that's dead, because Claude or ChatGPT can give you those in an instant. And, if you write another, blog post or do another video of, these are the 7 steps for doing X. No, but what people want, they want your personal experience, right? This is how I learned how to do this, right? So suppose you're learning how to be a coder, right? How to write software. You share what you learn, right? Or you're teaching AI. In fact, there's this great woman. I don't know if any of y'all follow this woman on YouTube called Sabrina Romanoff. She has a Russian last name, but she's actually Filipina. So interesting. I think it's because, but anyway, so Sabrina Romanoff talks all the time about AI, but she said in one of her videos, when you start learning AI, you start going deep in a topic. So you start becoming an expert. In 3 months, you'll know more than 99% of the population, if you go deep into something like Claude Code or Notebook LM, etc. And then in 3 months, you'll be so much of an expert. Then what you could start doing is sharing what you've been learning, right? That establishes you as an authority. So now you become an authority because you're 3 months ahead of other people, or it could be maybe you're a year or two, 1 or 2 years into your coding practice, or maybe you know something about dental hygiene because you studied it in college, right? And so you give tips, and this is how I see my teeth right here. This is how I was able to keep my teeth completely white. And then you talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, right? So that's really just sharing content from your experience on a consistent schedule, right? So, if you could do it, for example, if you want to do a YouTube channel, sharing videos about your topic from your personal point of view 3 times a week. Sabrina Romanov now has a team and she's trying to do daily videos, right? But I think sharing that content is fantastic. And I think that's, who was it that said, oh yeah, Alex Hormozy. I'm sure everybody here knows Alex Hormozy, right?
Yes.
Annoying as he can be sometimes, he's actually got a lot of wisdom. And he says, don't share how to, share how I, right? This is how I, right? Because AI can't duplicate that. AI hasn't gone out and gone through the school of hard knocks to learn something. It just learns by stealing content from everywhere, right?
Love that.
Yeah. So share how I instead of how to. And so I think, and if you're consistent, if there's a book that you should read that actually teaches you how to do this, written by a very good friend of mine, it's called Content Inc. So Inc. like a company, right? Incorporated. So Content Inc. by Joe Polizzi. And he talks about how to be essentially a content entrepreneur. Now, maybe some of you, maybe most of you don't want to become a content marketing person, but the principles still apply. If you want to become an authority, share content from your personal experience. And he talks about a methodology for, how to find your content niche, how to find your content differentiator, because it's all about creating content that's unique and authoritative and focused on a particular niche and a particular topic, right? Because if they can find the same topic that you're talking about from somebody else, you all are talking about the same thing, that's not going to get you anywhere. You have to be differentiated, and it has to come from your own personal experience. So Content Inc. by Joe Polizzi. Let me see if I can find, and I'm not an affiliate for this. I just
You can I'll make a note and you can actually send his book and yours to me and I will make sure to share them with the group.
Okay, perfect.
I think Marcos, you have a question.
Marcos Moreno.
Oh yeah, hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Super interesting so far. Yeah, I just had a question. I've been one of those reluctant to adopt AI people, but I'm getting there now. The thing is, what concerns me is I think there's some fun to be had in the short term, the medium term, but there's a lot of there's predictions that there's a lot of disruption happening. By the end of this year, right? We got some big players are going to be disrupted by the end of this year, especially with the ease of replicating, tools and SaaS businesses and other stuff. So just wondering, where do you think this is going to go, based on what you can see now, further down the road, where's this going? Because it's the way we look at work is going to change pretty significantly. So just kind of curious on your general take on that.
There's let me see. There's a podcast that you should listen to, a podcast episode called The Artificial Intelligence Show. And it's the Artificial Intelligence Show. The two co-hosts are Paul Retzer and Mike Caput. Paul Retzer is the founder of the Artificial Intelligence Institute. And in a recent episode they did, okay, so these are people that are very AI forward. They jumped on the bandwagon 7 years ago before large language models even came into existence for the general public. right? And in the latest episode that they talk, I don't know if it's the latest one. It's I think it's 190, episode 198 or something. One of the latest episodes in February. They basically sound the alarm about how AI is going to pretty much replace all knowledge worker roles. But then they were saying, well, if you get ahead of the curve and you learn how to master it, then it's kind of like you being a wizard, and the AI is the universe bending to your commands, right? So that's so this is kind of doomsday stuff from people who are immersed in AI, right? So, but I still feel enthusiastic about it because I feel like as though if we set aside our skepticism for a while and we immerse ourselves in one tool or the other, choose one area to focus on, then we can really take advantage of it to help the rest of the world, right? And I think that for those of us who are in tech, we're kind of in this tech bubble, right? This tech company bubble, right? If you go out of tech, like I joined my local chamber of commerce here, and I'm in Round Rock, which is just north of Austin. It's a suburb of Austin, Texas. I go to the Round Rock Chamber of Commerce now. I just started going, and it's all non-tech businesses, window cleaning companies or manufacturing companies that make heavy machinery and all these things, and nobody has a clue. So that if you know AI, you have an advantage, and you can teach them. You can provide services to implement AI in their businesses, etc. So even though these guys are talking doomsday stuff, I think it's going to take a while to trickle down to the rest of the work world, right? The tech industry, like they're saying that 90% of Claude's software development now is being done by Claude Code. I mean, that's insane, right? So developers are now acting as product owners or something, or product managers as opposed to coders. And I think that if you kind of take this attitude of, you know what, I'm not going to be skeptical anymore. I'm going to be AI, what do you call it? AI positive. Then your whole mindset shifts, and you become enthusiastic, and you can start to see opportunities that you never saw before. And, even though I'm doing the summits, et cetera, I'm also helping companies get their, Claude Cowork set up, right? So,
Interesting.
So
We actually, we have a question first from Yambo in the chat. So he is asking, well, you mentioned the AI generated cartoons from one of your friends. Looking ahead, what other opportunities excite you when it comes to combining AI and content for new business ideas? And also for the how I instead of the how to, if you would still recommend focusing only on video.
yeah, that's a good question, and I guess it kind of depends on, I think that we tend to obsess over the how instead of thinking about the who, right? And I think that, and this is a lesson that was somebody reminded it to me today. I had a couple of really interesting phone calls with people that I love and respect. These are marketing experts, and I've been doing a bunch of calls with marketing experts just to kind of get feedback on my own offering. I think it's important to do that every now and then. But what he told me was sort of helping me get back to the basics, and the basics are, you got to focus on the who, and the what will make itself apparent, right? So when I say focus on the who, it's like, okay, first of all, decide who is your target market, right? What market do you know better than anybody else, right? Or are you representative of your own target market? Is the target market you, right? So then you think about your target market, and what is it that they typically, where do they consume content the most, right? Are they readers? Are they on Substack? Do they like to read long form, well thought, well written, well researched articles? Then Substack is their space. Then I'm going to focus on long form, well researched articles. Although I don't know if y'all have been on Substack lately, but it now has a timeline and they're sharing videos on it just like everybody else. Or if they're, they're Gen Z and they're in the beauty space, or if they're, I don't know, whatever space, really kind of is driven by who you'd want to serve, right? And what is the best content format and best channel to approach them. Now, in terms of trends, from what I'm seeing, I do think video is a place where more and more people are focusing in on their attention, right? But I also think there's room for long form videos. So I did mention short videos, and I think short videos are a good way of hooking people. So you think about a funnel and you think about the awareness. So think about a sales funnel that kind of goes like this, right? Right, narrow at the bottom, and there's a big, wide mouth at the top. The top is awareness, the middle is consideration, and the bottom is sales. I'm finally going to make a decision. Top of the funnel, those are really the short videos, that you get that appear through algorithmically to you on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, etc. But they should lead to a long form video. And long form videos are great for those people who are in the interested or the consideration phase, right? So people who are now say, okay, this is an area that I'm really interested in. I want to learn more, and I want to learn in detail, right? So there's room for long form content, both long form videos, long form newsletter articles, books. People still read books, believe it or not. So I think there should be a spectrum of content, right? The short videos are great for capturing attention, for filtering out the people who might be interested in you. And then the long form people, for people who are, okay, these are for serious, these are not for tire kickers, these are for people who are serious about learning the topic that I am an expert in and in which I sell a product or a service. So I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Nice. Joel, you had a question.
Yeah, fair. What are the strongest integrations you've seen with Claude, or that have provided the most benefit to you from integrating with your interaction with Claude?
Frankly, I think it's Notion, but the voice recording, the transcription function of Notion. Okay. So, and I'll tell you why. I do a lot of content, obviously, and I do a lot of sales because I'm I'm a one-person show at the moment, right? My goal is to grow my agency, so I have a team of 5 people by the end of the year. But when you're on a phone call, whether it's with a prospect or whether it's with somebody you're interviewing for, your podcast or whatever, having that integration, so you don't have to like get the transcript and then upload it or paste it into Claude. Just tell it, hey, give me some of the insights from this call that maybe I didn't notice myself, right? So I've trained my Claude co-work to identify those subtle insights that I may have missed because the conversation is going really fast for LinkedIn content, or blog posts or newsletters, right? Sales opportunities. If they mention some kind of a keyword, well, I wish I could do this, or, that would be great. Or I've had it, like, for example, let me give you a concrete example. I was meeting with a friend of mine who happens to be a venture capitalist, and he was mentioning how he had this idea for a book. And I said, oh, really? Tell me more about that. Okay, cool. And he had mentioned it before, like 4 months ago when we met. He had mentioned the book, and that was before I had my Notion integrated to it. But this was actually an in-person meeting, so the example is not quite about Notion, but it's the same concept. So I talked to him, and this is the second time he mentioned the book. And I said, oh yeah, I forgot you had this idea for a book. So I quickly wrote in my laptop after we left the coffee shop, and I said, hey, these are the notes from my conversation. I wrote it in Claude Cowork, and So tell me about some of the insights there that coincide with my area of expertise, book writing, organizing summits. He said, yeah, he's got a book that he wants to do, and I think that's something that you should focus on, right? And then what I did with Claude Code is I actually wrote a book proposal for him, and I sent it to him, and he was like blown away. He says, okay, this is exactly the direction I want to go in with my book. But that's one of the most valuable connections, I think, is if you start recording every single one of your calls, or you had transcribe it, and Notion has a great connector to Claude Cowork, and you can tell it to look at the insights. You can have a running file, a .md file, where it writes content ideas, sales ideas, and other types of insights that you want to get out of each conversation, right? And then you can also send a follow-up emails. Oh, I loved having that conversation with you. These are the points we talked about. These are the action items, etc. Perfect.
Transcriptions are so powerful. Yeah, it is amazing. Guys, any other question? I do have one, but want to give you some opportunities as well.
Where's everybody from? I'm just kind of curious. Is everybody from BC? BC area?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Vancouver prop, or where exactly?
We are all over.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if anyone here is actually from Vancouver. Well, Eugenia, you were born in Canada, but not in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I have met maybe 10 people from Vancouver in 3 years.
Yeah, they don't talk a lot. They're not very kind of quieter, I think.
I'm now in Vancouver, but I'm not from here.
Oh, okay. You know, it's the same thing with people from Austin, Texas. It's really hard to find somebody who's actually from Austin.
Yeah.
You know, they're either from New York or from Miami or from California or.
Yeah, running away from taxes.
Yeah.
I do have a question first. So you mentioned your timeline. You had like two big laid off, and in 2023 you decided to leave the corporate world for good. And that is something that a lot of people are looking forward to, leaving the corporate job, building a business, and you know, building their own path. So you took the step, you did it. How is it going? What can you share?
Okay. So it really kind of took me a while to get going after I got laid off, because you know, when you want to start a business, you really have to decide, okay, what am I actually selling? What is my value proposition? What are people actually going to buy? And what am I actually going to do? Right. So I was going around and around like that. I did get a few clients that I helped create content for social media and writing books, etc. But it wasn't until I kind of finally saw, I kind of had this light bulb moment. It was in January of last year, 2025, when I was kind of barely scraping by. And I suddenly saw, well, you know what? I can help people by interviewing them, right? On, you know, doing a podcast style interview. And these are founders who are mostly about my age, you know, Gen X, boomer founders, you know, founders in their 50s and 60s, right? And they don't know about social media. They don't know how to create content. You know, all they've done their whole life is doing the thing that they're doing right now, which is, you know, whether they're developing software or whether they're running companies. So I said, look, let me just interview you, and we'll turn those interviews through AI into all this content that we're going to put on your social media feed, right? You're going to share it from your personal LinkedIn profile. And I called it a content cascade, right? Because it's just a cascade of content. From one 30-minute video, you can create all these different pieces of content, because it comes from 30-minute video produces about 5,000 spoken words, right? And so I decided that that was what I was going to sell. It was kind of, it came to me in a flash because I had done it before. I kind of accidentally did that one time for a client. This is the one that I did the summit for. So this is the Mexican client where we organized the summit. We got 904 people to register. We got 16 speakers over 3 days. And that was what I used to promote the summit, because he didn't have, I said to my client, do you have any money to do advertising or to hire a PR, to get some PR? And he said, zero. So I said, okay, we don't have a lot to work with over here. So I suddenly thought, well, we could interview all the speakers, right? Kind of give us the speakers could give us a preview of the topic that they're going to talk about. 15-minute interview, very short interview. We don't want to give away the farm before people comes and registers. So I interviewed all the speakers and I interviewed my client, and I turned those videos into short videos, long videos, LinkedIn content, newsletter content. And then I started I tried to recruit some, not recruit, but I actually approached a chamber of commerce, an industry chamber, to say, hey, would you like to promote this to your members? And they said, yeah, this is a topic that's very relevant right now. Let's do it. So I created the content from those interviews that they used to promote the conference, right? So that was something that I just did in the spur of the moment, because I realized, well, we don't have an advertising budget, but if we create all this content and reproduce it and kind of like flood the zone, people are going to start seeing it, right? And then other people saw it and they shared it to their audience, and somebody who has a newsletter with 3,000 subscribers approached us and said, I'll share on my newsletter. And that's how we got all the subscribers. So I saw that insight, right? And then I suddenly realized, golly, I could probably just offer that as a service, just the whole content repurposing, interviewing people, repurpose it. And they loved it because, number one, I said, look, and I had one more insight, okay? So the missing piece of the puzzle was I learned about this thing called founder-led marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And founder-led marketing is, normally if you have a company, you have a marketing team doing your marketing, and they share content on LinkedIn or whatever from the company account, right? But what people started noticing is that nobody consumes content that comes from a company account anymore. That's just boring and it's just generic. It's not interesting. But if it comes from the founder sharing his or her own experiences, that's interesting. So I added that. So I added all that content cascade of interviewing people and repurposing it into different formats with the founder-led content. So I started, I called people that I knew, people that, I worked with before, or people that I knew owned companies. And I said, look, this is what I can offer you. You don't have a profile yet on social media. You're not a thought leader yet, but I can help you do that through this founder-led content cascade powered by AI. And I showed it to them, and it's like, oh my God, they loved it. So I quickly, like in quick succession, I got 5 clients. That's all I could handle at one time. And I started making really good money all of 2025. And that's what I was doing. And now I'm at a point where I'm saying, okay, this is now I'm at that point where I said I need to add the summits to this thing and kind of close the circle. I need to add the books and the summits and the founder-led content cascade for a complete marketing move. My throat got dry. For a complete marketing flywheel. And now I'm about to close a deal with a larger company for a lot more money than I've been selling before, right? And so it's just getting better. So nice. I would say that I will soon be at a point, Abel, where I'm going to have to hire 1 or 2 people to help me with this. Because that's the whole purpose. I don't want to be a solopreneur for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I want to hire a team of people who can help me. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all right. You spoken a lot. Yeah, I understand. We started the company as a solopreneurs because that is what we have. It's our own time. And then we want to scale to building a business where we don't have to work in the business, but on the business eventually, at least.
Yeah.
So we have we are a little bit on time, but we have one more question. So let's do this last question. So it's from Yambo. He says, when starting a niche content project from scratch, what do you usually focus on in the early stage to make sure it gains traction? The flow, the response rate, or others, before we really start developing any business models in
What do
experimental stage?
you focus on in the early stage to make sure it gains traction?
Yeah.
Okay. What you really want to do is you want to start looking at people who comment and people who share, right? So people who comment with not just, oh, this is great, or it was very inspiring, but people who actually comment with very thoughtful comments, or maybe who ask questions, right? And then you especially want to look at comments where people say, well, I wish I could do this, or yeah, I'm frustrated about that. These kind of emotional comments that show a need or a frustration or a pain, right? So I wish, you know what, I have to go get some water. Let me be right back.
Yeah. We are squeezing everything out of Fernando.
Oh yeah, and there were just a short time to give your feedback. Yeah, I really enjoyed these 2 weeks that the guests you invited recently. Yeah, because
Nice.
we didn't intend yet for targeting on marketing. Sorry, content marketing, but our recent two speakers, yeah, their specialty and their business is based on this. And last time we from Junhan, right? Junhan, he didn't use AI, but this time Fernando, he's a very good AI content marketer. So I learned a lot. Personally, I learned a lot from.
Although I find it interesting because he says it is AI powered, but it's actually human powered, and AI is just like summarizing stuff. So I think that's interesting. I don't know. I'm gonna look for this after what he says. He said about Claude's code being written by Claude. So far, all the AI generated code that I've seen is awful. So I would love to see that.
Yeah, I saw that. I think I heard that in that podcast, that same podcast that I was telling you about, the AI, the artificial intelligence show.
Yeah.
And I think the information is out there in the public domain about that. But okay, the other thing too, Yenbo.
Thank you.
Is I think that you want to bring people to a newsletter. And that's the reason why is because if you have a newsletter.
So you mean a newsletter? I forgot the word. I did not catch it. It's a newsletter.
Newsletter, yeah.
Oh, newsletter.
Yeah, newsletter. So you want to bring people to a newsletter on like an owned platform like Kit or Beehive, any one of those things, because you actually have access to their information, right? To their names and their email addresses, right? It's a permission-based thing, right? So if people come into your newsletter, they basically subscribed. And that means they're at the highest level of interest. And usually people who are on your newsletter are more likely to buy something that you're offering. Obviously, you have to share valuable content before you ask them to buy. You don't want to share 100% commercial information. But the other thing too is response rates from social media are very low, right? Because it's all algorithmic now, right? Everybody, even LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, it's all part of the interest graph. So your content is going to be seen by about 1 or 2% of your audience versus a newsletter where you have a lot more control about that, because there's no algorithms when it comes to your newsletter, right? And all the major companies that have a content motion, They all have newsletters. They all have a way of capturing an email address from somebody, right? Okay. Yeah, I think you're right, Eugenia. The understanding is that agentic AI is still fundamentally an LLM that is empowered to use. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Definitely something that I will read about later.
Mm-hmm.
You hit me with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are on time, and I do appreciate everyone's time here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Fer, for sharing so much insights and your story. I have like so many notes, and I wish we had 2 more hours to ask you questions, but maybe another time.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I mean, I really enjoyed being here with everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fernando. We'll contact you.
All right,
with
guys.
some-
I will send you Fernando's connection and information and his book. And Fer, if you have any resources or anything to share, you can send me that to my email and I will distribute it to the group.
Abel, and thank
All
you
right.
so much for the opportunity. And I really would appreciate everybody's attention.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
See you guys. Have all a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.